エクソダス。この番組は Web3 専門メディアの編集長キャリアのある2人がブロックチェーン、暗号資産、NFT とデファイなどのニュースやトレンドを深掘りする番組です。この番組はソラナとイーサリアムのためのオールインワン暗号資産ウォレットバックパックの提供でお届けします。現当社新しい経済編集長のしだれゆうすけです。スーパーチームジャパンリードの大木悠さんとお送りしているこの番組、今回のエクストラ回はこの番組のスポンサーでもあるバックパックのCo-FounderでCEOのアルマーニさんにゲスト出演いただきました。アルマーニさんにこれまでのクリプトにおけるバックボーンやソラナとイーサリアムの文化的な違い、他の新興 L1 チェーンをどう捉えているか、そしてアルマーニさんが日本に拠点を移した理由と日本の魅力などについて語っていただきました。それではぜひお楽しみください。本編に入る前に番組スポンサーのご紹介です。この番組はソラナとイーサリアムのためのオールインワン暗号資産ウォレットバックパックの提供でお届けしております。バックパックは業界をリードする強固なセキュリティと初心者でも使いやすい UI を備えた Web3 ウォレットです。ソラナの人気 NFT コレクションMad、Ladsのクリエイターとしても知られるチームがデザインした最も先進的な次世代 NFT ウォレットでもあります。バックパックは iPhone Android、デスクトップブラウザ版でダウンロード可能です。ぜひ最先端のウォレットをスマホや PC で体験してみてください。この番組の概要欄に各種リンクを貼っておりますので、皆さんぜひチェックいただければ嬉しいです。それでは早速本編をお楽しみください。今回のエクサスエクストラはバックパックのCo-Founderで CEO のアルマーニさんにお越しいただきました。アルマーニさんよろしくお願いします。アルマーニ、very exciting to have you. Exas podcast welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
そして今回ですね、通訳としてバックパックのドチャさんにもご出演いただいております。ドチャさん、本日よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いいたします。
いや、大木さん、ついにですね、バックパックの CEO のアルマニさんに今回お越しいただきました。まずどこからお伺いしましょうか。ソラナについてとかですね、日本の印象などいろいろお伺いしたいと思うんですけれども、まずバックボーンなどお伺いしましょうか。
そうですね。まずなんで、アルマーニさんのクリプトにおけるバックグラウンドを聞いてみたいと思うんですが、So, Armani, thank you for coming. And maybe to begin with, could you tell us about your background in the crypto industry? I read some news about your former Alameda research software engineer and what you're doing and since then when you started joining this industry and how you come to be the co-founder of Backpack.
Yeah, sure thing. So let's see. So when I came into crypto in 2018, my first real job was, as you mentioned, at Alameda Research. So this was kind of before FTX was even started. And I was only there for about 3 months. And I kind of ended up there by accident, honestly. Was there from January 2018 to March 2018. And basically left to work on Ethereum protocols. So I kind of ended up in a trading firm by accident. I really wanted to work on open source in crypto. And so started working on Ethereum protocols. And that is when, a lot of the first, or not first, but what that big kind of Ethereum boom happened. The price kept going up to seemingly infinity, obviously not. But a lot of really interesting engineering problems surfaced due to the lack of scalability of the Ethereum network back then. And so I just got really interested in exploring other alternative blockchain architectures and runtimes. And basically in 2020, after kind of, bouncing around a bunch of different ecosystems and just learning a bunch of cool stuff, working at different companies, found my way over to Solana. And that's kind of how I got, exposed to the Solana ecosystem, was when, basically the Alameda folks called me up once more and basically told me to check it out and kind of like the rest is history. And so basically I've been doing stuff in the Solana ecosystem since 2020, worked on all sorts of stuff, wallets, DeFi, smart contracts, and developer tooling. And fast forwarding to today, we have, the Backpack wallet, the Backpack exchange, and the Mad Lads NFT community. And so, yeah, that's maybe a bit of how I got into crypto.
私は2018年の1月に暗号資産業界に入り、FTX がまだ設立される前のアラメダリサーチで働いていました。その後、オープンソースのプロジェクトに取り組みたいという思いから、3ヶ月後の2018年の3月に退職し、イーサリアムプロトコルに専念することにしました。イーサリアムブームの中で、ブロックチェーンのスケーラビリティ問題に興味を持ち、チェーンのアーキテクチャやランタイムを学びました。 その後、2020年に再びアラメダに戻り、ソラナエコシステムを本格的に深掘りすることになりました。それ以来、ソラナで、ウォレット、デファイ、スマートコントラクト、デベロッパーツールの開発に取り組んできました。現在は、バックパックウォレット、バックパックエクスチェンジ、およびマッドラッツ NFT コミュニティに関わっています。
ということはもう2018年はイーサリアムで2020年からソラナについて勉強し始めたということで、2つの大きなチェーンをすでに経験として、ナレッジとして持っているということなんですが、で、ちなみにバックパックはね、両方サポートしているっていうことですけど、この2つの違いというか、一言では言えないかもしれないですけど、両方の開発経験があるということで、違いについて聞けたらなというふうに思います。So, Armani, obviously, Backpack is supporting both Ethereum and Solana currently. And in your crypto career, you have worked as a developer in both chains, right? Ethereum and Solana. And I guess those two are the biggest. One of the top three. Two are besides Bitcoin, those are kind of the biggest, and I would say the second biggest chains. How would you describe the difference when it comes to when you worked in both chains as an engineer? You probably have some maybe cultural difference, or maybe obviously the community difference, or how to approach products. It's probably hard to answer in 5 minutes. But if you can point out immediately, what would be the difference when it comes to developing things? Yeah.
So if you're asking from a cultural perspective, I think the main thing that is really at the heart of everything that you see is that Solana, of all the chains, Solana is probably the most influenced by what you would think of as Silicon Valley and traditional startups, where everybody is very product focused. Everybody's thinking much more about their startups than they are about idealism or open source, for example. I think that's probably the core difference. Is that you see folks like Anatoly, he literally lives in San Francisco, and a lot of his tweets, for example, it's like the Paul Graham playbook, right? In a really positive way, where it's all about users, it's all about the product, it's all about how do you build things that people want, and how do you solve problems to find product market fit and build a sustainable business that or protocol changes the world. And I think that has a bunch of second order effects. It makes, I think, people a lot more pragmatic. I think very competitive. It's probably one of the core reasons why you see a lot more closed source on Solana versus Ethereum. It probably describes a lot of the geography in terms of where people are from and where they live. Solana, I think, for the most part, has mostly been a Western project, in the US and in Europe. And it's really only been recently. I mean, you guys would know better than anyone that Asia and APAC growth has started booming. And I think that is, I think, a couple examples of kind of, those effects. But yeah, I think the core of it is really just, the startup mindset.
文化的な観点から見ていきますと、ソラナはシリコンバレーのスタートアップ精神に強く影響されているため、製品開発とユーザーが求めているものを作ることに重点が置かれています。このマインドセットはサンフランシスコに住むアナトリのような人物に代表され、問題解決、プロダクトマーケットフィットの追求、そしてサステナブルなビジネスの構築が重視されています。この現実的な競争的なアプローチがイーサリアムに比べてソラナの方がクローズドソースの開発が多い理由になります。地理的なところで言いますと、ソラナは主に米国やヨーロッパの西洋プロジェクトが中心に動いてきましたが、皆様もご存知の通り、やっと最近ではアジアや APAC 地域で成長が注目されています。一言でまとめますと、ソラナの文化の中心となるのはスタートアップ精神ですね。
That's very interesting.
ありがとうございます。
それで、そうですね、今、ソラナの特に文化について文化的な背景についてすごく理解できたんですけど、結構、僕の解釈では、そのイーサリアムって結構計画というか、青写真をすごく大切にするカルチャーがある気がしていて、その実行する前にめちゃくちゃ準備して、実行するっていう。で、ソラナってどっちかっていうと走りながら 考えるみたいな。まあさっきのね、話に通じるところあると思うんですけど、で、そこら辺の考えが、まあ合ってるのか、ちょっと聞いてみたいなと思います。はい。So, Armani, speaking of the Ethereum culture, let's say, in my kind of understanding, they like planning a lot. So they like, I guess they don't want to make mistakes in a sense. So they want to put a lot of efforts in preparation. While as probably you were also saying something similar, Solana, you kind of try fast, and they may make mistakes, but you learn something new, and then you kind of improve. So that's kind of I guess the philosophy, the approach to making a product is also like my understanding of the cultural difference. And I guess my question is, maybe do you agree with that kind of difference? Do you agree with that kind of interpretation? And personally, which culture do you prefer?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think that one is right or wrong. I certainly think there's maybe a directional preference between the two. I do think that your statement is more or less pretty accurate. A lot of people would describe the Ethereum community, not that I speak for them, but just from the outside looking in, it's very it's much more research oriented. There's a very rich research community in Ethereum, whereas Solana doesn't really have much of that. Solana is really has product people, engineers, and degens, and Ethereum has this really rich, very thoughtful research community, in addition to having awesome engineers.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of second order effects of both of those approaches, right? Ethereum has historically been a much more stable network. It doesn't kind of there's the meme about Solana, right? It's always going down or whatever. But also Ethereum moves much more slowly as a result. I think it's pretty fair to say that they've probably have just been innovating at a slower pace as well. At least at the core layer, at the application layer, they certainly innovate as much or more than anyone. But at the core L1 layer, it's been notoriously slow. And part of that is due to technical debt. Part of that is due to decentralization and the way decisions have to be made in a genuinely decentralized world. Part of that is just when you have so much TVL and so many stakeholders, it's just genuinely hard to change things. That's true in crypto, it's true in normal startups. Whereas Solana obviously started much later than Ethereum. It was much more nascent. The types of people were certainly like looking to push the limits in terms of performance. We're solving kind of a bunch of problems that nobody had ever really solved before, and as a result had, for better or worse, more of a move fast and break things mentality. I don't think it was intentional, but I think that was more or less the effect. And I think there's a bunch of negative second order effects as there is positive second order effects of that. I think a really good example of this is the lack of standardization for core primitives in the ecosystem that is often overlooked from outside observers looking in. It's funny, I saw Zaki from Cosmos. He's awesome. He's like probably one of the most wise people in the crypto space. But he tweeted this thing the other day where he said something along the lines of, the Solana Foundation can rally an ecosystem around something like nobody else, and it's really valuable. And what's funny about that comment is I would argue that the ecosystem actually is much more, it's kind of, I don't know how to say this, like messy and decentralized in the sense that there's like not a lot of central planning in terms of how things are built, at least at the application level or the smart contract level. And the best example of this is in NFTs, where, you had Metaplex that started as the first NFT protocol and kind of got distribution just by virtue of being first. But after that, there was just tons of NFT protocols. I think Backpack literally supports probably like 10 or something. It's some enormous amount. And there's still to this day no interface for it. There's no single API. And so anybody that wants to make a new NFT standard on Solana has to basically go around and lobby and basically beg, every wallet, NFT marketplace, every NFT project to actually support it. Versus on Ethereum, they don't do that, right? They have these ERC, RFC processes where they define these interfaces and these standards where the community collectively agrees this is what an NFT will look like. These are the APIs. And then once that planning is done in a more or less centralized way, then you could have this rich decentralized ecosystem blossom around those standards. It's kind of this irony where in order to be maximally decentralized, you need to have a little bit of centralization to create the structure, create the foundation, let everything else bloom. Whereas on the Solana side, it's kind of like a bunch of startups just like racing to like do it first, and then everybody wants to get distribution on it first, and nobody wants to share the distribution. Everybody wants to use their standard because that's how they make money and that's how they have edge for their company. And so it's kind of this counterintuitive dilemma that I think is that emerges from these kind of differences. So anyway, it's a great question. It's a nuanced topic. There's pros and cons and trade-offs all over the place, but I hope that maybe gives some some insight into it.
イーサリアムとソラナの違いは顕著で、それぞれのアプローチの違いを反映しています。イーサリアムには強力なリサーチ志向のコミュニティがあり、その安定したネットワークは豊富なリサーチコミュニティと慎重な開発プロセスによるものです。しかし、この安定性はコア部分のイノベーションが遅くなるという代償を伴い、その主な理由として挙げられるのが、真の分散化を目指したいがために多数の利害関係者の管理の複雑さです。一方、ソラナはプロダクト志向の人間、エンジニア、そしてディジェンと呼ばれる熱心な投資家によって構築され、ソラナのアプローチはより実用的で競争的であり、その結果、ネットワークは迅速に進化していますが、しばし安定性に欠けることはあります。この来れてもいいから早く動けというメンタリティは大きな進展をもたらしますが、同時により頻繁に問題を招きます。この2つのエコシステムの違いが最も顕著に出るのが NFT の取り扱いです。イーサリアムは ERC などの標準規格を確立するために中央政権的な計画プロセスを採用しており、これにより統一されたエコシステムが促進されます。この構造化されたアプローチは一度標準が設定されると汎用性に優れます。一方、ソラナのエコシステムは少しわちゃわちゃした分散化と表現され、アプリケーションのレベルでスマートコンタクトレベルの中央政権的な計画がほとんどありません。例えば、メタプレックスは、ソラナ上で最初の NFT プロトコルとしてスタートしましたが、その後数多くの NFT プロトコルが続き、統一された API がないままそれぞれ競争を始めました。この標準化の欠如は新しい NFT が幅広く採用されるために、まず様々なウォレット、NFT マーケットプレイス、プロジェクトから個別のサポートを求めなければならないということになります。このそれぞれのアプローチはジレンマを引き起こします。イーサリアムの標準化における中央政権的なアプローチは総合運用性や汎用性を実現しますが、ソラナの分散化で競争的なアプローチは迅速なイノベーションを促進する一方で、エコシステムの一貫性と安定性を損ないます。まとめますと、イーサリアムとソラナはそれぞれ互いにいいところと欠けているところがあります。イーサリアムの慎重な研究主導の開発は安定性と構造化された成長を保証する一方、ソラナの積極的なイノベーションアプローチは迅速的な進展をもたらしますものの、エコシステムの断片化と不安定な状況を残念ながら起こすことがあります。
ありがとうございます。
そのさっきの汎用性のところでスタンダーリゼーションですよね。
そうですね。はい、
そこがちょっと欠けてるみたいなところが、ソラナはね、そういう話だったと思うんですけど、それって、ある意味いいところでもあるのかなというところもあって、それって変えるべきだと思うのかっていうのと、もしイエスだとしたら、誰がそれをやるべきだと思いますかみたいなのをちょっと聞いてみようかなと。はい。So, Armani, maybe just a follow-up question. No, you're talking about kind of lack of standardization in the Solana ecosystem, and that's is a result of everyone's kind of moving freely in a good way, and there's no one centralized organization intentionally creating that standardization, and that's kind of the state. And you said it's kind of a negative consequence of that state is that people kind of have to walk around and find out by themselves. I guess it takes time to figure out how things work in Solana. That again is the result of the kind of Solana culture. Do you think that this lack of standardization is a problem, that something Solana should fix very soon? And if yes, who should be in charge of that?
I think I would venture to say that it's not a problem. Really, maybe the way to think about it is in terms of it's just like, a free market. And that's like, how I guess Solana's approach has always been. It's to be as unopinionated as possible and to allow people to compete and explore the design space freely as much as possible. And whoever gets users wins. And that is a approach. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's one of many points in the design space. I think a lot of innovation is still kind of untapped at the ecosystem level. So you can imagine you copy and paste the Solana blockchain and then just put a bunch of opinions on it, where you take the opposite approach, where you don't have it be a free for all and you just say, all right, this is the canonical NFT program and this is the canonical DEX program or interface or whatever it is that you want to like standardize. And that would be an interesting experiment. But it's really hard to say like which one is right. I think Solana has its culture and its philosophy and its vision, and it's stuck true to it. And I think that's resulted in a lot of incredible stuff. So I don't think anything's necessarily good or bad. It's more of like an interesting observation of the consequences of decentralization.
問題か否かというよりは、単純に一つの異なった考え方と思うんですよね。ソラナのアプローチは常にできる限り意見を持ち、人々が競争し、この設計空間をできるだけ自由に探求できるようにすることです。その中で、ユーザーを獲得したものが勝ち組となるわけですね。ただ、この自由な設計空間において、エコシステムレベルで成長できる部分はたくさんあると思います。仮にソラナブロックチェーンにおいて、これこそが標準の NFT 企画だ、あるいはこれこそが標準の DEX プログラムやインターフェースだと一度決めてみるのも面白い実験かもしれませんが、どちらがより良いアプローチなのか判断するのは相当難しいと思います。ソラナは今の文化や哲学、ビジョンを忠実であり続けた結果、素晴らしい成果を成し遂げました。繰り返しになりますが、どちらがいいとは一概に言えず、単純に分散化が生み出した異なった方向性かと思います。
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
じゃあちょっと話を、時間も限られてるんで話を一個ご質問したかったのが、今イーサリアムとソラナの話をしてきたと思うんですけれども、なんかそれ以外の L1 チェーンとか、スイアプトス、セイとかいろいろありますし、そのあたりについてなんかどんな印象を持ってるのか、アルマーニさんが。話せるなら聞いてみたいなと、新興の他の L1 チェーンについての感覚。
So Armani, what he's asking is, so your opinion about, so you were just discussing about Ethereum and Solana.But how about other L1s like, Sui, Aptos, say, like if there's any, insights from your end, your views, like, it would be great to hear your perspective on these L1s.
There are a couple, I guess, that stick out to me. So I would say the ones that I'm both, at least somewhat familiar with and excited about. There's many that I'm unfamiliar with and so cannot really give any thoughts around them, but in no particular order. I think Celestia is pretty interesting just because of the point in the design space. It's just like it's like the polar opposite of Solana. If you put Solana like in one corner, you literally have Celestia in the other corner, and so it's super interesting as a result. Like you definitely want to have different teams exploring different ideas, and so I'm excited to see how that project turns out. I think Cosmos is a project that I've always thought was just always super wise and just generally had a view of the world that I kind of resonated with. Just multiple chains, giving people sovereignty and interoperability between them all is like a really powerful philosophy that's just been like today it's like you say those things and it's like, yeah, duh, obviously it's like so obvious, so blatant, but like it wasn't so obvious when they started out. And so I think it's a super interesting ecosystem. I think Monad is a really compelling project. They are very clearly solving an important problem. I don't know like to what extent they've actually solved the Ethereum parallelization problem, but it's a super important one, and I think the first one that does will do really well. It's like Ethereum and the EVM in particular is the most important runtime. Solidity is the most important smart contract language. As much as I don't want to use Solidity, it's like kind of like JavaScript in the sense that like nobody wants to use it, but everybody uses it still. And so it's just so obvious that you should parallelize the EVM, like duh, like of course, like like I need to drink water and breathe air and have parallel computation. So they are very clearly solving a really important problem. And I think that the team's done a great job building community before even launching the L1. And then Sui, I think is obviously just another really interesting project. Move is a really interesting innovation. I think innovating on developer experience continues to be super valuable. Obviously, a super strong set of founders and engineers. They seem to be attracting a small but genuine developer ecosystem. So I'm excited to see what those guys are doing. And then there's tons more, but there's so many like incredible L1s I can't, or teams that are building L1s that it's hard to keep track of them all. But those are the first ones that come to my mind. There's many others. I'm like, I just have no familiarity with, like Aptos and Say and many others.
数多く存在するブロックチェーンのプロジェクトの中で順序関係なくいくつか申し上げますと、まずセレスティアはソラナとは反対に位置するようなプロジェクトだと思っており、その対照的なアプローチが非常に興味深いと思っております。そのため今後プロジェクトがどのように進展していくのかとても楽しみです。2つ目はコスモスです。人々に、主権ソバニティを与えて、それら全ての間でインターオペラビリティを提供することは非常に優れた哲学だと思います。今だからこそ当たり前に思えますが、この考えが出た当初は誰もそんなことを考えていませんでした。だからこそ興味深く感じます。モナッドとかも非常に魅力的なプロジェクトですね。彼らはイーサリアムの並列化、パラレリゼーションの解決に向けて取り組んでいますが、ここが非常に重要なポイントです。最初にこれを達成したプロジェクトは脚光を浴びますが、イーサリアムと特に EVM は最も重要なランタイムです。ソリディティは非常に重要なスマートコントラクトの言語の一つですが、正直誰も使いたくないけれども使わざるを得ない状況にあります。だから EVM を並列化すべきだというのは明白です。モナッドチームは製品をリリースする前からコミュニティを築くことに優れた成果を上げているため、今後どのような展開を見せていくかとても楽しみです。他にも、Move はデベロッパー目線で革新を起こしており、ブロックチェーン技術の発展に非常に貢献していると思います。非常に優秀なファウンダーやエンジニアチームが技術的な解決を構築すべくデベロッパー中心にコミュニティ形成を行っています。今、いくつかパッと頭に思い浮かぶものをお話ししましたが、Aptos や Say など、私自身あまり存じ上げませんが、他にも注目されているプロジェクトはたくさんあるかと思います。
ありがとうございます。ちょっといろいろまだ聞いてたいんですが、多分お時間もあると思いますし、また来月以降も出ていただけるかなと思ってるので、でも今日本当に勉強になったんですけど、最後に今実はアルマニさん日本に住んでますよね。で、日本の印象とか、なんで日本に住んでるのかとか、あと日本のコミュニティの印象みたいなのを教えていただきたいです。
So thank you, Armani. Your answers I'm learning a lot here with you. But given the time constraints, let me ask you another. I guess it will be like maybe one or two last questions. But I want to hear, your perspective or your, I guess your take on the Japanese community, and maybe if you can share with us why you decided to live in Japan.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you ask yourself, where in the world do you live if you want to build an international crypto exchange? And you can't live in the US. You can't. So you're out of the US, which I'm from the US, and so it's that's. But that would be like my first answer. It's like, oh, we're gonna live in the US, or whatever. But you can't live in the US. Where do you live? It sounds simple and maybe quite obvious, but go live close to your users. Then you ask the question, okay, well, where are your users? Who do you want to serve? And if you're in crypto, I think Asia is an awesome place to be. Not only is there like a vibrant culture here, but there's just tons of people that genuinely use crypto and tons of people that use exchanges. And then the question is, okay, well, where in Asia? And there's a bunch of incredible cities and countries in Asia. But Japan immediately sticks out for a couple reasons. So firstly, Japan used to be like one of, if not the center of gravity for crypto, back in like the Mt. Gox days, right? And then kind of, we slowly but surely saw a bunch of hacks that kind of tightened the regulation here and pushed a lot of people outside of Japan. But nevertheless, there was still a really strong community here. Still a bunch of people passionate about crypto, still a ton of users, still an amazing market to build a company and to serve users with the product. And what we've been witnessing recently is kind of a reversal of that trend, where the country is actually very excited about crypto and is, incentivizing and encouraging people to come into the country to build kind of next generation crypto products, to kind of reclaim that center of gravity that it once had. And so I think that's one a really important element. I think another really important element is, I mean, you guys obviously would know this, but Tokyo in particular is just an incredible place to live. It's honestly just like one of the best cities in the world. It might just be the best city in the world. I mean, anybody listening to this probably has been to Tokyo, and but I think it's very obvious, maybe for a Westerner after having been in Tokyo for a while, that's like, oh, it's a great place to live. It just, in terms of just personal happiness, it's awesome. And so I think that's another really compelling reason. I think a third really compelling reason is how challenging it is to actually compete here, and how challenging it is to actually build like a company here. And on the one hand, you might see that challenge and that barrier to entry as something that would scare you off. But on the other hand, another interpretation of that is, well, if you can actually solve a lot of those problems and rise to meet that challenge, then, well, it's a really valuable thing to do. And so that was kind of our interpretation, where we know how hard it was. We know how challenging it is to deal with regulation here, and to, especially for me, I'm an American. I'm not natively Japanese, obviously, and so I think to move here, or to set up a company here, as somebody that's not Japanese, it's kind of like crazy, right? It's like, who does that, right? It's like most Americans wouldn't do that. Although there actually is like a decent amount of Westerners and Americans that I've found in Tokyo, and I think just because it's an amazing place, but I digress. And so that is generally a good heuristic for searching for value in the world. It's like, find hard things that other people aren't doing and see why. And if you can do it, then you can probably create value. And so I think all those things considered, Tokyo and Japan is an amazing place, and I would encourage any crypto founder to at least come visit and experience it. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
こういうとこなんですよね、私この会社の大好きなところ。
いいですね。
本当に。
素晴らしい。
No, just telling them, these answers that you just gave, are one of, if not, the main kind of like reason that feels me, great from my end to be part of this company. But yeah, let me just translate this your answer. But そうですね、非常に興味深いと言いますか、よく聞かれる質問ではあるんですけれども、大きく3つ理由があります。まず1つ目なんですけれども、やっぱり私自身アメリカ人なので、当然ながらどっか会社を開くってなったら、アメリカっていうのが当然ながら一番最初の答えになってくると思うんですけれども、残念ながらアメリカがクリプトフレンドリーかというとそういうわけではないと。なのでその時点でもアメリカっていう選択肢が消えています。じゃあ2つ目の考え方としてはじゃあユーザーの近くにいたい。じゃあそもそも私たちのユーザーってどこにいるのかってところで、やはりクリプトに関して言うとやっぱりアジアの、この、人口ですね、ユーザーが圧倒的に多いっていうのがあったので、アジアにまずじゃあフォーカスを当てましょうと。で、アジアの中でも当然ながら素晴らしい都市っていうのはいくつかあると思うんですけど、その中でもやっぱり東京っていうのはやっぱ群を抜いて素晴らしいと私自身は思っておりますというところで、その理由が、まずそのクリプト ネイティブな人が多いっていうところですね。コミュニティの強さが目立ちますということですね。で、2つ目の理由なんですけど、なぜ日本かっていう理由なんですけれども、当然皆様ご存知の通り日本ってもともとはクリプトのハブでもあり、マウントボックス時代にもそうだと思うんですけども、世界のクリプトの中心といっても過言ではないという存在で、ただ残念ながらそのいくつかのハッキングの問題とかによって、どんどんその規制が強化されて、で結果的に多くのそうですね、クリプトのユーザーが海外に出てしまうっていう現象が起きてしまったんですけれども、近年といいますか今年もよく見えるところではあるんですが、やっぱりその政府含めてどんどんやっぱりその逆に呼び戻したいっていう動きが見えてきていると思うんですよね。なのでそういったところも含めて、非常にこれから自分たちのビジネスの開くところとしてはいい場所だなというふうに思いました。で、続いてのポイントなんですけれども、そもそも東京はもう誰もが住みたい街ですよねと。もうどんな人に聞いても、東京に来たことある人がいればもう必ずと言っていいぐらい皆さん多分東京が大好きって答える人が多いと思うんですね。なので単純にもう住みやすいってところも当然ながらその理由に入ってるんですけれども、ただそのやっぱ会社を運営していくってことを考えると当然ながら他の理由も考えなきゃいけなくて、東京で先ほどその規制の話もあったと思うんですけども、非常に彼自身の言葉を使うとチャレンジングですよね。東京で、日本国内でクリプトの会社、をやっていくのって非常にチャレンジングなんですけれども、この必ずしも参入障壁が低いとは言えない環境、むしろ難しいからこそ多分怯えてしまう人がほとんどだと思うんですけれども、でもそれを乗り越えた時に要するにユーザーが喜んでもらえる部分でしたり、自分自身もそうですね、やっぱりその一つのバリアを超えた喜びっていうのがあるので、ある意味そのチャレンジングだからこそ、やってみたいっていう思いが、私たちにはありますというところですね。なのでそういった点を含めて、東京で思い切って会社をやることにしました。
ありがとうございました。じゃあ本当にまだまだ聞いてたいんですけれども、アルマニさん今日は本当にアルマニさんありがとうございました。
本日本当に、ありがとうございました。So Armani, the time passes, time flies, and it's been great to have you at our podcast, and we learned a lot from you, and especially I liked when you explained about the reason why you are in Japan. It's you know it's challenging, but therefore you are in Japan. You're gonna create new value by overcoming those challenges. So that's really that I am really impressed by that mentality. So and if you are okay, we would like to have you moving forward on a monthly basis or on regularly. I mean, and like to talk a lot more about Backpack, Mad, Lads, Solana ecosystem, many other projects. So thank you for your time today.
Yeah, that would be terrific, and thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
ありがとうございます。
今回のエクスタースエクストラはバックパックのCo-Founderで CEO のアルマニさんにゲスト出演いただきました。エクスタースはこのようなゲスト会に加え、毎週水曜日にマーケット情報とニュースをお届けする通常エピソードも配信しております。ぜひまだ番組をフォローしてない方いらっしゃいましたら Apple、Spotify、Voicy など様々なスタンドで配信しておりますのでフォローいただければ嬉しいです。そしてこの番組では皆さんの感想やリクエストを募集しております。 X でハッシュタグでエクスタース使用、エクスタースカタカナ使用ひらがなです。このハッシュタグをつけてポストいただくか、しだら大木さん宛てに DM の方でご連絡いただければと思います。皆さんの感想やコメントをお待ちしております。それではこの番組はソラナとイーサリアムのためのオールインワン暗号資産ウォレットバックパックの提供でお届けしました。またエクスタースでお会いしましょう。さようなら。この番組は一般的な情報提供のみを目的として配信しているものであり、いかなる暗号資産有価証券等の取得を勧誘するものではありません。また出演者による投資を目的としたものではありません。暗号資産投資にはリスクが伴います。投資を行う際はリスクを了承の上、ご自身の判断で行っていただくようお願い申し上げます。